China is edging closer to an invasion of Taiwan. The CIA is targeting China. And is Biden going soft on China? That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. China currently has the ability to invade Taiwan, but according to Taiwanese Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-jung, right now the cost would be too high. However, in a parliamentary committee hearing this week, he said by 2025, Beijing would be able to do so at a minimal cost, and thus have the full ability to mount an invasion. His statements come on the heels of the largest ever sustained incursion by the Chinese military near Taiwan's airspace. Over the span of 4 days, a record number of Chinese aircraft, nearly 150 total, flew through Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Chiu's remarks came during a review of Taiwan's nearly $9 billion spending plan to mass-produce homegrown missiles and ships over the next 5 years. That's in addition to the $13 billion 2022 military budget, which has gone up because of all of the Chinese Communist Party's threats. Meanwhile, Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen is trying to drum up international support. In an essay in Foreign Affairs, she wrote the fall of Taiwan would be catastrophic. If Taiwan were to fall, the consequences would be catastrophic for regional peace and a democratic alliance system. It would signal that in today's global contest of values, authoritarianism has the upper hand over democracy. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is calling on China to stop provoking Taiwan, while White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says China's actions undermine regional peace and stability. And if Beijing fears anything, it's, really serious words. Meanwhile, President Biden said he had spoken with Chinese President Xi Jinping about Taiwan during their phone call back in September.
I've spoken with Xi about Taiwan. We agree we'll abide by the Taiwan agreement. That's where we are. And we made it clear that I don't think he should be doing anything other than abiding by the agreement.
To which everyone said, wait, what? Because there is no official agreement between Beijing and Washington about Taiwan. There's no agreement at all. So what is Biden even talking about? This isn't the first time Biden has caused confusion with his statements about Taiwan. Back in March, Biden said the U.S. would defend Taiwan against invasion. Then the White House later had to clarify that the U.S. does not have a defense treaty with Taiwan. So, who's looking forward to Biden and Xi holding a virtual summit later this year? But in a positive development, it turns out that U.S. troops have been stationed in Taiwan for at least a year. That means the troops would have been sent during the Trump administration, with the policy continued by the Biden administration. According to officials, about 24 members of U.S. Special Operations and Support Troops are conducting training for small units of Taiwan's ground forces. And after the break, find out what the CIA's plans are for China. Welcome back. The CIA hasn't had the best luck in China. A leak back in 2010 resulted in almost the entire CIA operation in China getting killed. Literally. Well, now, the CIA is shifting its focus back to China with a new mission center. This is actually yet another continuation of a Trump-era viewpoint. Back in 2020, intelligence agencies began saying China is the greatest threat to the U.S. The new China Mission Center will bring more resources to studying the country and better position officers around the world to collect information and analyze China's activities, with hopefully fewer CIA sources getting murdered, especially since this week also saw a top-secret cable saying dozens of CIA informants around the world have been compromised and killed. Hey, you know how the CIA is always being accused of being behind every major world event and conspiracy like they're super competent? The CIA is also creating a second mission focused on developing new technologies to modernize spycraft, especially since China has invested in a lot of technology that makes their work more difficult. surveillance cameras, and facial recognition software powered by artificial intelligence have made evading detection in China particularly challenging. According to an official, the two mission centers naturally overlap, since the main area of competition with China is technology. It's about innovation and making sure we're staying apace with the revolution in technology. So while James Bond movies show the intelligence community using cutting-edge tech gadgets, reality is a little more disappointing. And after the break, it really looks like the Chinese Communist Party knew about the coronavirus much earlier than it let on. Welcome back. For months, we've been waiting for the Biden administration to outline its China policy. For instance, what about trade tariffs? Many in the U.S. want the tariffs to continue, to put pressure on a regime that has been waging economic warfare against the U.S. for decades. At the same time, others want the tariffs to end so they can get back to getting rich off doing business with China. And now it seems like the Biden administration is trying to have it both ways. U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai finally gave a speech marking the end of an 8-month review of Trump's China trade policies. The Biden administration will maintain tariffs Trump imposed on more than $350 billion worth of Chinese goods and warned additional duties or other trade restrictions may follow if China does not address U.S. concerns. However, the speech also clearly signaled to Chinese President Xi Jinping that the Biden administration wants to end the holding pattern in bilateral trade relations in favor of constructive engagement. What's constructive engagement? What Tai called durable coexistence. And nobody knows exactly what that means. The Biden administration isn't giving any details. However, durable coexistence does not sound like the policy Biden would be taking if he truly viewed China as a brutal authoritarian regime that has been openly waging war on the United States. When one side wants to destroy you, there is no durable coexistence. Speaking of the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party, China was ordering a lot of extra PCR tests months before the first known COVID cases, specifically in Hubei province. You know, where Wuhan is? The story comes from internet research firm Internet 2.0. They conclude with high confidence that the pandemic began much earlier than China informed the WHO about COVID-19. You can see Hubei spent more on PCR tests in 2019 than the previous 2 years combined. China, of course, says the report is ridiculous. A spokesman said, "Virus traceability is a serious scientific issue that should be addressed by scientists." Of course, scientists also must be prevented from ever traveling freely to Wuhan to study the epicenter of the outbreak. That's a serious political issue that should be addressed by politicians. According to a Reuters exclusive, a U.S. electronics firm has been caught directly using Uyghur labor, which is potentially problematic because there are a lot of reports that the Uyghur Muslims in China are subjected to forced labor and forced relocation. The U.S. remote control maker Universal Electronics, Inc. told Reuters it struck a deal with authorities in Xinjiang to transport hundreds of Uyghur workers to its plant in the southern Chinese city of Qinzhou. Just to give you an idea of the distance, workers were transferred from Hotan in Xinjiang down to Qinzhou in Guangxi province. This is big because the U.S. company was directly involved. In previous cases, like say with Nike, it would be Chinese subcontractors who were accused of using Uyghur slave labor. Nike wasn't directly using it, and it gave them room for some plausible deniability. Universal Electronics, Inc., also known as UEI, sells to major tech companies like Sony, Samsung, LG, Microsoft, and others. They employed at least 400 Uyghur workers. Uyghur workers were transferred to the company under police supervision because they totally aren't slaves. That's according to a spokesman for the company. It said it treated the Uyghur workers the same as other workers in China and said it did not regard any of its employees as forced labor. However, the company does not know how the workers are trained in Xinjiang or who pays for their transport to Guangxi. And despite the company's denials, it looks a lot like forced labor. UEI's Uyghur workers are under surveillance by police during their transportation and life at the factory, where they eat and sleep in segregated quarters, according to details in Qinzhou government notices and local state media. In other words, UEI is partnering with authorities in Xinjiang, the same authorities accused of running concentration camps for Uyghurs. Even though there's piles of evidence Xinjiang authorities are using Uyghurs for slave labor, UEI is taking them at their word that the Uyghur workers they are literally shipping to UEI's factories, sometimes under police guard, are there voluntarily. That sounds like durable coexistence to me. By the way, if it can be proven that UEI knows its Uyghur workers are being used as forced labor, that's a crime under U.S. law, even if it's happening in China. Any UEI whistleblowers willing to come forward? And it's not easy making a show that criticizes the Chinese Communist Party. We experience loads of demonetization and censorship from YouTube and Google, and not many advertisers are brave enough to work with us. So we rely on support from viewers like you, who want to join us in exposing the Chinese Communist Party to the world, by contributing on the crowdfunding websites Patreon or Locals. As a thank you to them, whom I call the China Uncensored 50-Cent Army, I answer a question of theirs on the show. Today's question comes from Joe Lounsbury. Why should Taiwan avoid becoming a nuclear-armed state? I am assuming if they went the Israeli route of nuclear ambiguity, they could deter an attack while not getting sanctions. Well, that's a good question. I'm actually not sure Taiwan should avoid becoming a nuclear-armed state. It would be awesome deterrence for a Chinese invasion, and actually might go a long way in preventing a war. I actually did an interview with one of the leading experts on Taiwan about Taiwan having nukes. Check it out, it's very informative. But another option is the U.S. could station nukes in Taiwan. The U.S. actually did that back during the Cold War as part of the United States Taiwan Defense Command. But as part of the U.S. shifting its official recognition from Taiwan to the People's Republic of China, those were removed. No reason they can't go back, unless that would get in the way of durable coexistence. Thanks for your question and your support, Joe. And if you'd like to join us in the fight to expose the Chinese Communist Party to the world, you can help us by liking or sharing this video, or you can join the China Uncensored 50-Cent Army over at patreon.com/China Uncensored or ChinaUncensored.locals.com. You get different perks with each, so check them out. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.